Welcome back to week 2 of Collaborating for ELs. We're going to focus on co-planning this week, but I would like to introduce you to a few more of your classmates and highlight your work from last week.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jolene Almeida. I am from Puerto Rico, but I moved to Fort Worth, Texas 4 years ago, looking for better opportunities. I've been in the educational field for 21 years, teaching elementary grades from pre K through sixth grade. Actually, I am an instructional coach for Birthville ISD here in Fort Worth. Also will say that in Puerto Rico, I was teaching ESL, English as a Second Language, for a couple of years. I would say like 9 or 10 years. Also was a Spanish teacher and special education teacher. I also taught dance. I used to be a professional dancer, and I use a lot of movement and TPR to be included in my lessons because I think we can express so much with our body and that the students get so much from our expressions as well. So I'm looking forward to learn more strategies and to learn more things about what TAN is doing and to collaborate with you guys so we can help our English learners thrive. Well, bye-bye.
Hi, my name's Tony Winch, and I currently live in Germany and work at the Frankfurt International School. Fun fact about myself, I used to live in Transylvania, not too far from Dracula's castle, which was a fantastic experience. I am a instructional coach at the Frankfurt International School, and I also teach English to 2 classes in grade 6. Next year, I might be teaching one of those classes with an ESL teacher, so co-teaching that. And definitely next year, I'll be teaching one class with a learning support teacher, where we're trying to change our model of supporting learning support students. It'll be the first time I've co-taught, so the course will be useful, hopefully, for learning how to co-teach, and also in my role as a coach in school as well. Nice to meet you all. I look forward to working with you over the next few weeks. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm currently working as an EAL teacher for a school in South Korea. The majority of the students that I work with are middle school students, and I also provide support lessons for some high school students in my school before their exam. A fun fact about me, I love running, and a few friends of mine and I set a challenge for ourselves to run 5 kilometers every single day during the holiday. The challenge started on the 1st of July, and if I successfully finish the challenge next Sunday, I will finish running 200 kilometers during the holidays. So that's quite exciting. Nice meeting you all. I'm really looking forward to learning with all of you.
I just want to say how impressed I was with all of you to take time to introduce yourself and then also to respond to other people's messages. This is how we create a community online. Wow, look at all of this. Some of you chose to reflect on our Flipgrid reflection page, which is fantastic. I'll share a few and also a response.
One thing I'm really reflecting on that was in the video for this week was that phrase, freedom in focusing on what we can control. I think that's so powerful in a collaborative relationship, especially with our colleagues, where we can't control what anyone else can do, but we can always control our mindset, our actions, and find ways to focus on positives and things that we can do to support students so that even in those teaching relationships where maybe it's somebody that's very reluctant to co-teach or somebody who's pretty set in their teaching style and not open to trying different ways of collaboration, that there are still opportunities that we can use to bring our own expertise and knowledge to support students and to benefit learning. And I just really like that because I think in working with teachers, classroom teachers, and in supporting my colleagues in cultivating collaborative relationships for co-teaching. One thing that is really challenging is sharing space in a classroom and finding that right balance when you're co-teaching with another adult. And so that idea of just focusing on what we can be in control of, I think frees us up to do some of our best thinking around how to support students and not perseverate on things that we can't control.
Hi, everybody. Stephanie from Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. Just wanted to start off by saying thanks so much, Ton, for a very, very thought-provoking, informative first session. Like Marjorie, I've taken lots of notes and doing lots of reflecting. I also wanted to thank Marjorie and Kendra for your great comments about collaboration with teachers that may have different perspectives or background, and Marjorie's comment on the video with the woman in grocery store. So I had a similar thought that I think we can really benefit from finding ways to work with teachers of different backgrounds, and it made me think of working in small group instruction with students from different backgrounds, and how that gives us the opportunity to build relationships and build from what students know already, and have a responsive asset-based approach with them. And I'm wondering if we might be able to take that model when it's worked successfully and apply that to collaborative work with teachers. I'm feeling that the mindsets of asset honoring and perspective seeking are areas that we could really learn, I think, from small group tutorial instruction, and use what we learn from those small groups about our students to apply to when we're working with teachers.
Hi, Stephanie, Bruna here. Yeah, I really liked what you had to say about transferring some of the things that we do with our students into the relationships that we have with our partner teachers and co-teachers. Specifically, I think with students, we often give them a lot of frameworks for the work that they're doing together. So whether that's giving them sentence frames that they might use to have their discussions, or actual agendas or step-by-step plans for how to approach a particular task or a meeting with one another. There are so many things that we add into routines, that we add into the group work that we do with our students, that often, at least at my school, is kind of lacking in the teacher collaboration meetings. And I think part of that is because we're adults, and so we don't always need all of that, or at least we feel like we don't. But there might be something to adding in some of those things, because even though it might feel a bit awkward or foreign at first, I think they can add a lot of depth to our meetings. And once you get comfortable with certain routines, I think if you can get people to buy into them, then they could actually make your collaboration that much more effective. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out, that we can transfer what we do with students to teachers, because I think, at least I often lose sight of that and forget that.
Another form of engagement is having conversations in your small Voxer groups or the large one. This is a fantastic way to share your thoughts and to interact with other people. Keep the conversation going. Some of you chose to engage by creating sketch notes of the video. Let's look at them now. This sketch note comes from Julie, and she sketch note about Voxer. You know how much I love it. And this one comes from Sajida. Notice how she used her text in addition to images to communicate her ideas. Her little piggy is super adorable as well. This one comes from Sherry. She's used to creating digital ones, but she chose to create a physical one this time. She said the experience was different, but she still liked it. This one comes from Donna. She used more pictures than text, which is fantastic too. And her texts are different than mine. They help process her own ideas. Thank you to everyone who shared their sketchnote. You're motivating others to do the same. I look forward to seeing your sketchnotes next week in the coming weeks. I also want to review your mind maps. I loved how you wrote different things. I loved how you added your quotes. Some of you added images and icons. Some of you shortened the text.
Some of you added emojis and little icons. You really made it your own thing. What's important is by the end of these 5 weeks, if you do all of these things, you will have a complete mind map of all your essential understandings. I want to share what Mariko wrote. Naysayers of co-teaching often anticipate their teachers' constricted mindsets and sets these up as barriers. It becomes an excuse not to try to take the first step. Our mindsets need to adapt just like we do to the changes in the seasons. We can only control our thoughts and actions to help our students in the end. And this captures the essence of collaborative mindsets in a little nutshell. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mariko. As of Wednesday, there are lots of people who did optional assignments, which are fine. Let me share with you a few. This one's from Ryan. This one's from Stephanie, and she did one that's based upon the nautical theme. This one's from Sherry, and she created her own style. So she just did her own thing, but using the same structure. I guess this is like differentiation, or allowing for student choice or human choice, right? And this one's from Mariko. And this one is from Virginia. I also want to say, Virginia, thanks. I definitely laughed out loud when I read this, and you used the Bitmoji to communicate with me. That's super adorable, and I just want everyone to see how this part in particular, the head, heart, feet inventory, how she did it for her colleague that she's thinking about, and she said, "Well, we really do have more in common. Well, except the neatness part. I could work with that." And this is what makes me so happy to for you to go through this process and think, you know what, I have more in common. I can work with my colleague. Even though sometimes it's not pleasant, I can work with them. I also want to say thank you for everyone who is just taking the time to read and respond. Because even if you don't do the assignment, the fact that you're responding is fantastic, because you get to process their ideas. You get to think about what they're doing. You get to think about their ideas as well. This is fantastic. This is another form of engagement. Right? Make sure you set it as comment only, so we can all comment. Again, of course, these are just forms of engagement, and you can choose what you want to do.
I think my absolute favorite part of the course is running the live co-planning sessions where I can interact with everyone and everyone can see each other live. And I asked for people to give me formative feedback that's anonymous. And one person asked for feedback here. He said, I feel a little overwhelmed by all the different ways to communicate on Google. It's new for me to use Voxer. Any tips on how to manage all the tech? That's great. The key is don't try to do all of the engagement activities. Don't try to do all of the activities that are offered. Instead, I would say watch the videos. And if you're not used to Voxer, not a problem. You don't have to use it. What I would recommend then is go asynchronously. So go to Google Classroom like this and just look at people's assignments and their postings and then respond just like this. For example, this is Virginia's, and she's from Texas. And just the fact that people are reading it and sharing and responding, that's a form of engagement. That's really easy and it's so simple. Just make sure you, for example, go here and click comment, and then you can type your comment. And that's a form of engagement as well. It's an easier form of asynchronous engagement. Thank you. So last week we had a co-planning session at 8 in the morning Eastern time, 7 a.m. in Bangkok, 2 a.m. in Frankfurt time, and then 5 p.m. in Vancouver time. So this would be reasonable for the people in the East Coast and Vancouver, but not so reasonable for people in Frankfurt. So this is what I did, just to make sure I alternated the dates so that next week, people in Frankfurt or Europe can join in their afternoon, and it's not going to be as reasonable as for people in Vancouver. It's still reasonable for people in Bangkok, Southeast Asia, Korea, and then the East Coast. But Vancouver, we get to return the third week where it'll be in your afternoon, evening, early evening, so you can find a nice little place to sit
and have your afternoon, evening tea, and then join us. So I just try to make it this way, alternating time, so that it's reasonable for you. Of course, I never ask you to wake up at 5 in the morning or 2 in the morning to attend these sessions. These are just for you when the time is reasonable. It's just another form of engagement.
The opening stimulus for this week is a force analogy. Here's an image. I would like you to use this photo and make an analogy for collaboration. Let's make this interactive. Please write your analogy in the comment section on this video. You can use this strategy when you facilitate professional learning for your schools or in your class. It's a great way to get teachers to start thinking about the topic of your session. For me, co-teaching is like the vehicle that transports students to a desired destination. However, co-planning is like the pilots. They work together long before even stepping into the plane to set a course, anticipate problems, and develop a rapport. It's this course that guides them for the long journey ahead. During the trip, they might make minor adjustments, but the bulk of their work has been done during the course setting stage. I know that you want to go straight into the classrooms to work with students to support them, but if we are caring for a plant, we have to water the roots, not just the leaves.
This is my go-to mantra. The fruits of co-teaching are rooted in intentional co-planning.
Reflecting on my experience, I feel that I've been able to make the most significant gains for ELs and actually non-students alike during the co-planning stage because the homeroom teacher or the content teacher can offer me as much as I offer them. Here's what Andrea Hungensfeld and Maria Dove said are the things that each member can offer each other. I know that many of you are in autumn and winter relationships that are currently making you feel like you're merely an aide or a helper in the class. However, we can elevate your impact through co-planning because co-planning is co-teaching. Like Oprah says, that's a tweet moment, y'all. Let me say it again. Co-planning is co-teaching. Many teachers are more receptive to co-planning than actually co-delivering instruction because it's a low risk and high impact approach. It's low risk because teachers can rehearse and trial instructions before delivering it. Teachers have time and the mental space to respond intentionally to students' needs rather than react. For teachers who are controlling and territorial, co-planning provides a safe and alternative starting point for them to support students.
In the first unit of the year, we wanted our 5th graders to be able to explain their ideas using evidence in their writing. During our co-planning time, I shared a format called CIRC. C stands for claim, E stands for evidence, R stands for reason, and the last C stands for closing. The CER part comes from the Next Generation Science Standards, and I added C, the closing part, for it to round out the paragraph. Miss C and I worked together to flesh out what each part means during our co-planning time. What you're looking at is the exact document that we co-planned together. The CIRC format was high reward because it was used again and again throughout the unit. It was low risk because it was simple enough for teachers to use in their classes without me being there to directly teach it. In the end, 4 of the 5 teachers decided to use it too.
I took the lead during co-planning. I created the visual documents, and Ms. C took the lead introducing the structure to students. It does not matter that I took a supporting role because I had a direct role during co-planning. As long as we have planned together, doesn't matter who delivers the instruction. My plea to you is to realize that being in front of the room is not the only way we can impact and shape instruction. Maybe we can come to realize that one of the best places to directly impact instruction is found sitting right next to our colleagues as we co-plan. Now that I've raised the volume on co-planning, it's time for me to share some different co-planning structures. The first one comes from Andrew Hagensfeld and Maria Dove. It's called Escrow. Notice the S part, which recommends that we focus on discussing the big ideas of the unit and establish the learning goals, which is similar to my concept of high-impact co-planning. I want to emphasize the E part of Escrow. If we want to have a meaningful influence on student achievement, planning in the hallways or by the water cooler is not enough. We need to establish a co-planning schedule that remains unchanged, mostly unchanged, throughout the year. At the beginning of your school year, our first job is to establish a co-planning schedule. When I worked at an elementary school, I had all of the 5th grade teachers help co-create a teaching and co-planning schedule at the same time. When I worked at the secondary school level, I created my schedule to include time to co-plan with the science department and different times to co-plan and co-teach with the history department. I strongly recommend that the schedule making be a collaborative effort. It's also planting the first seed of a dynamic relationship because we are coming to an agreement around students. If time is limited, try to use technology. I once co-planned a lesson with a teacher in Canada while I was in Vietnam using, what else? Voxer. The planning session took a total of 9 minutes spread across 7 days. We did not have to schedule a time to meet. We just sent messages when we had a chance.
Hi, Tan. It's good to hear from you this morning. Thank you so much for sending the message. As far as my context goes, I live and work in Abbotsford, British Columbia. I live on a side of town that has a really large number of, especially Indo-Canadian people. So at my school, there's a very large ELL population as well. In my classroom, for example, I teach grade 3-4. It's like 14 or 15 of my students are ELL. So they see a ELL specialist throughout the week, and I collaborate with him throughout the week. I have a class of 24. And yeah, I guess the only other thing I can really add is I have also spent a little time overseas teaching English. I spent about 4 years living in Japan, which is why I kind of gravitated towards teaching schools with kind of ELL populations. This is why I chose the place I'm currently at.
Not a problem. I totally understand. Reports are take priority. So just a quick question. Let's say by the end of our lesson on Wednesday, what do you want kids to be doing?
Hi, Dan. I'm just adding a bit more to the plan for the lesson. I decided, because we're doing the review and I'm working with a younger class with my class, I thought what we'd do is a review of a book that my class would recommend to their younger peers. So, partly it's kind of contributing to the community to help kind of lift up those who are younger than them and to help them kind of make decisions about what to read next. I was also looking at our competencies for a curriculum, and the one I'm going to focus on especially, it's called Plan and Create a Variety of Communication Forms for Different Purposes and Audiences. So we're going to look at like the kids they're going to be writing and reading to, and think about their perspective and their reading level, so taking that into consideration.
Hi, Craig. And for that day, what are you thinking for in terms of lesson sequencing?
Still kind of building up the actual sequence of lessons in my head. I'm just finishing up my reports tonight, so hopefully I'll get more and more done tonight and tomorrow. More when I can. Bye.
And if it's about reviewing a synopsis, have you heard about SWBS? It's called like Someone Wanted to, But So. It comes from a book called When Kids Can Read, What Teachers Can Do. So let's say like if it's Frozen, it would be like Elsa, which is the somebody, wanted to be free and live authentically. So she left her castle. She left her home to live by herself. So I've used that with high schoolers all the way down to the elementary school kids, and they really understand that easy concept and framework.
Hi, Dan. As far as what I hope my students to get by the end of the lesson, I think the big one is the synopsis. That I think is kind of the harder one for them to kind of talk about what the story is about, but not also just tell the entire story, which is what I was talking about my students with when we watched a show just yesterday. I will look at the SWBS thing. That looks really cool. And the thing I was using so far, which I'm actually kind of combined with that nicely, I've been using a program called Story Champs. It's an oral language program. And the basic story structure in that I was talking about with my kids, using that, like the first half of the story structure, to kind of build a synopsis. And it's basically character setting and problem and maybe feelings. And I just talked to my kids about how you would have those parts, but for the synopsis, you wouldn't go as far as the action to solve the problem or the ending or anything like that. But I'll look over the SWS and see how that works. It seems like it might be a bit more thematically related, which the other one I'm using is more just the literal, here, like things that literally happen. And I was kind of wondering how I could get more of a like my students to reflect on the themes and ideas in the story rather than just the literal happenings. So that SWBS might be more what I'm looking for. So thank you for the heads up.
I wanted to ask, what would be the lesson sequence for that day?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about that a bit. I think I'll choose today and tomorrow a story that we've probably already read this year and kind of do like a teacher example and have the kids pair off and then practice kind of like copying what you and I have told them about, summarizing. And then I haven't thought much further than that, to be honest. But the basic learning target I want to do is, I can summarize a story. So that's kind of the main focus, even though our review we're doing will involve like author and illustrator and all that kind of stuff. The main learning target will be I can summarize a story.
Okay, I got it. So we'll maybe use 3 books. The first book is, well, all those 3 books will be a book that the kids are already familiar with. The first book is the book that we'll model together. The second book is for kids to do it in small groups. And then the last book will be students applying the strategy by themselves. What do you think?
I think given that it's only a 30-minute lesson, and with this group, there's always anxiety about the like language or new concepts. And also there will be cameras that day. Probably what we'll get out of them is just the thing we model. And also time will be used to like introduce you as well and what's happening. And then working with pairs and then doing a little presentation. We'll have like 2 or 3 pairs model for the rest of the class. And I don't know if you used it where you are, but it's a learning target kind of poster to kind of show like, hey, this is what we're aiming for and where did we get, what did we do well, what did we need to improve, and kind of share what we were able to do in class before doing anything individually. And individually, I'll because I'm actually really excited about this whole thing now. I want to keep going through to Christmas. This will be kind of something we spend a little bit more time on, go deeper this lesson and others, and then use it for, the next few weeks or so. Model it, have them pair off and practice, and we help them out with that. We have a few people to present, and I'm thinking given the lesson time, that should fill up the entire time.
Oh, that's a great idea. Adding the target poster, or I call it success criterion, is so great. So do you want to lead that since you're familiar with the target poster more than I am?
Yeah, I think the thing, I don't want to like focus on too many things for the target poster, but mostly it'll be, I think the structure of the synopsis is like, did they get all the parts in there? But we'll focus on for that. That'll make everyone at the district happy too, because they're really pushing the target posters. Yeah, no, this is really exciting. So I'll try to write up something today or tomorrow and just get it kind of in my head. And then I guess we'll try to communicate more about it. But it feels like this is kind of coming together good. So yeah, thank you so much. This is really fun.
Not a problem. I also agree this is super fun. I have a question. Where would you like me to be? How would you like me to support instruction for that?
As far as, where you'll be in the lesson, hopefully you can be right up there, because I think the kids would really get a kick out of that. Like seeing different people, and I'm sure they're a bit tired of me going on and on every day in front of them. So it'd be nice to have a new face in class. They're a pretty cool group of kids, so they'll probably appreciate it a lot. I might also be kind of in and out, because I do have some 2 or 3 kids who behaviorally need a little bit of assistance. I don't always have an extra person in class, like an educational assistant. So I might be popping in and out and, with someone.
Is it okay that I start my part with a little bit of a game with the kids, so for them to get to know me and for me to get to know them and to break the ice? Yeah,
that'd be awesome. They like to move and have fun. And I can be around for those who might, struggle with controlling their bodies too much. That'll be a really good introductory activity though. So that sounds good. And so I got to run, but when I have information about my lesson plan and everything, I'll give you some more info. And yeah, can't wait to see you on Wednesday.
I have one last question. As we work, I wanted to know what are the books, the 2 books that you want to use. I will create a Google slide to help add the visual scaffold to the lesson. You can just give me the 2 names. I'll send it, I'll put it on a Google slide and I'll send it to you and give you editing abilities as we work on it. Thank you so much.
You can also use the collaboration function on platforms such as Google Slides and Google Docs to work in different locations at different times on the same goal, which is student learning. These are Craig's and mine shared Google Slides that we created for the lesson. Again, we worked on it when he was in Canada and when I was in Vietnam. Once a co-planning schedule is established, we need a structure for co-planning. This is a super helpful structure that comes from Michelle Gill, who is a teacher coach from Abbotsford, British Columbia. She shares this co-planning template with her teachers to support the process. It includes the essential things teachers need to target during co-planning, such as the content, the product, and the process, along with forms of scaffolding and support. I know what you're thinking. I don't have time to co-plan. I know that some of you work with multiple teachers and across different schools, yet I know that collaborating with teachers is possible. Here's one perspective on the issue of not having enough time to collaborate. Think of co-planning like a vase. There's limited space, just like we have limited time. You are given different materials, a pile of sand, a few pebbles, and a big stone. Your job is to fit all of these things in the vase. What is the order in which you will place them in the vase? Most people would say that they put the big stone first, then the pebbles, and finally the sand. Shake the vase around so the sand fills and fits in the spaces between the big stone and the pebbles. This is called high impact co-planning. Let me show you an example of planning with the big stone in mind. Here's my actual schedule that I worked when I was an ELA teacher serving 5 grade 5 teachers. I only get to plan with most of my teachers once every other week. And our planning time lasts for only 35 minutes. So how did I make 35 minutes work? Let me walk you through the actual example. 2 weeks before the unit started, Miss C and I met for 35 minutes. The goal of that meeting was to plan the next unit from a 30,000-foot perspective. We first referred to our writing rubric adapted from Lucy Calkins. The narrative rubric was our big stone that anchored our planning. The rubric had 3 big parts: structure, development, conventions. These were our pebbles. We asked ourselves, if the unit was a play, what's in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the play? Then we asked, in the beginning weeks of the unit, what skills do students need to write a narrative? We wrote these down. Then we thought about things we could do to teach these skills. Notice that we are not planning detailed lessons at this point. These are just the broad ideas. We repeated this process for the middle part of the unit. This initial broad planning took only 35 minutes. We agreed to meet in 2 weeks' time to plan the Phase 1 lessons. Then 2 weeks later, we met during our planning time and we didn't start from scratch. During this meeting, we flushed out all the objectives and lessons connected to Phase 1. We agreed on who would teach what. This meeting lasted 35 minutes. Then during my personal prep time, I worked on the lessons I was assigned. This is the key. During co-planning, you identify the learning objectives, who is teaching what, how it will be taught, and if it is in small or large group instruction. Do not use your time co-planning every slide, every bullet point, every worksheet during your co-planning time. Work on these items during your prep time.
As phase 1 neared completion, we repeated this process again for the next phase. The takeaway here is that we are anchored to the high impact co-planning items. In this case, it was our narrative rubric. This was our big stone. The phases were our pebbles. The granular details of the lesson were done during our prep time. In this way, we made the best use of our co-planning time.
There are 5 strategies that I use the most when I co-plan. While I do not use all of them all the time, they are all useful tools that you can use. Content, product, process comes from Carol Ann Thomason's differentiation framework, but I use it to identify the learning objectives. I ask about the content to determine the topic and the standards students are supposed to learn. This is usually the thing I ask first when co-planning. When I know the content, I ask about the product or how students will show they have mastered the content. Some examples of the products include tests, posters, reports, recordings, presentations, graphic organizers. It helps me determine the end goal of the lesson. Then I ask about the process to determine how students will learn the content. Will it be in whole class, small group, or individual sections, or stations, or modeling, as just some examples. At each stage, I think about how to support students and develop their language skills. For the content, I can help students learn and use the content-specific vocabulary words and help them comprehend the key understandings. For the product, I can guide students through the steps and help students meet each part of the success criterion. For the process, I can help students follow instructions, interact with others in the class. High-impact co-planning is a realization that there are things we can plan about that will have a longer lasting effect, while others have a shorter shelf-life. Things that are low impact are planning for today's lesson or tomorrow's lesson. It feels like putting out fires. High-impact co-planning means planning things that require multiple days of instruction to meet or planning things that will be used for the rest of the unit. It requires our colleagues have a big picture of the unit. To help them with the vision, here are the questions you can ask during your co-planning. When co-planning, I pay close attention to the word, sentence, and discourse level of the lesson. At the word or phrase level, it is compared to the bricks of a language. The sentence level is when we put the individual words together to form a concrete and complete idea, like the wall of a house. The discourse level is how the ideas are organized, or how a text is structured, which is like the roof of a house. At the word phrase level, I focus on the content-specific vocabulary words and academic vocabulary required of students. At the sentence level, I focus on how students string the words together and the purpose of the sentence, which might be either recall, explain, argue, or discuss. At the discourse level, I focus on how to organize these sentences together. We focus on transitions and the sequence of ideas. These are the umbrella categories for all the academic verbs students are asked to do in school. Recall is describing the features and the characteristics of something or retelling the events. It is about addressing the what of the topic. Explain is describing the relationship between ideas, events, or phenomenon. It is about the why of a topic. Argue is to form a claim and to use evidence to support this position. Persuasion can go into this category too. Discuss is how students interact with people's ideas. Teachers can focus on providing paragraph scaffolds to support older students to use language for specific purposes. In deconstruct and sequence, we take a task, then deconstruct it into its individual parts. Finally, we sequence which part of the task to do in what order. This makes the task manageable for students, and we can explicitly teach each part of the steps. I know that many of you enrolled in this course to learn about the exact strategies that I described. I hope you will find these helpful during your collaboration. They have certainly been effective for me. A key aspect of co-planning is identifying the language objectives. We can use WIDA's key uses to help us do that. Whatever the content is, just make sure to add the words "I can" followed by either recall, explain, argue, or discuss. Sometimes I like to add the word "by" or the phrase "by" using the words to make it connected to the content too. Here are actual examples of language objectives from my class. I want to pause to share that these strategies can be used while you're virtually co-planning to deliver distance instruction. Though the content in which we now teach has changed temporarily, the approach in which we plan with colleagues need to remain focused on planning for students' linguistic needs. Also, when we plan for students' linguistic needs, it is also an act of anti-racism because we are holding students to the same high expectations. We're supporting teachers to keep expectations high by explicitly teaching and scaffolding for language. Just like the way we scaffold instruction, we can provide scaffolds during co-planning. WIDA has categorized scaffolds into 3 groups: sensory, graphic, and interactive. These are the things you can offer your co-teacher during co-planning to support instruction. You can find a detailed article about these 3 scaffolds on my blog, which I'll include in this week's resources slide. Additionally, I've added 2 more types of scaffolds: linguistic and emotional scaffolding. I'll also link these blog posts to this week's resources. Our expertise is the ability to help students comprehend instruction and engage in tasks. Scaffolding makes this happen. If you have a standalone EL class, which is often referred to as pull-out classes, then co-planning is still encouraged. Andrew Hungsman and Maria Dove also support co-planning even if you have these situations. The EL teacher incorporates grade-level curriculum with language acquisition instruction in the pull-out classroom, while the general education teacher is teaching the same content material in the grade-level classroom. For example, when I worked in the 5th grade, my students did not enroll in Vietnamese classes. Instead, they came to my EAL classes 3 times a week. Because I was already co-planning with the grade 5 teachers and I already knew the content for each unit, I anchored my EL instruction on the content for the grade. When my students were learning about ecosystems, for example, in their homeroom classes, the texts we read, the videos we watched, the writing we produced, the discussions we had were all grounded on ecosystems. I did not teach each content, but instead I used the familiar context to develop my students' English skills. Context is like the soil and language objectives are like the seeds. Most seeds need soil to grow. As I used the content from my homeroom classes, students were developing a greater conceptual understanding of the content, which better supported them in both environments. However, language development was the focus of the EL class, and the content was just the context or the soil to develop the language. I know that many of you have EL classes where you gather students from different grades to meet at the same time. Then what can you do about planning? If, for example, you have students coming from grades 6, 7, and 8, I recommend co-planning with the 8th grade science or social studies teacher and using their content as the context for your language classes. If you teach the content from grade 6, then the 7th and 8th grade students will have already learned it. If you take the 8th grade content, then we are front-loading for all students who will eventually learn the content when they reach the 8th grade. Over the years, I picked up a few tricks that I would like to share with you. One trick is to understand what a no and a yes and a maybe mean. For example, when a colleague says no, take it as a not yet. Gently plant seeds for the future, but don't abandon the plot of land. There's a time for everything. Pushing at the wrong time can be toxic to the relationship. When someone says maybe, I hear, show me. This is our opportunity to convince them because they're interested, but they have yet to fully be persuaded. Lastly, when we get a yes, that's an invitation to co-create with colleagues. I hope this helps you speak the secret language of collaboration, as they have helped me so much. The second tip is having self-coaching words while co-planning. To explain this concept, let's watch a video from renowned meditation teacher Tara Brach.
How do you deepen a listening attention? How do you clear the field further? I find it helps a whole lot to coach myself. I sometimes just toss in a few words, that it could be something like, I'm here, I'm listening, I want to hear this person. It could be something like, I'm listening to the words and who's behind the words. It's that interest, because interest will help us clear space. One friend wrote that her coaching words are, it's their turn, just listen. And because she wants to be helpful, she said, this is already helping them. Slow down, pay attention, respect their pace. So find your own self-coaching words that help you to really bring your interest and care and create that space, that clearing.
To add on to Tara's point for self-coaching words, I have totem words for each of my co-teachers. Just as a totem is a complex symbol for an entire story, a totem word is a key word that can help capture a positive trait of your colleague. For example, Teacher's A totem word might be humor, while Teacher's B might be organization, and Teacher C, creativity. Co-plan with these totem words in mind. When working with Teacher C, dial up your imaginative side and incorporate creativity into your co-planning, for example. Another tip is the pro-collaboration language. Use language such as what if, yes, and you may consider. You can have strong convictions, but also have gentle approaches. These all help you have gentle approaches while keeping your strong convictions. When things get difficult, remember this by St. Francis de Sales. Nothing is so strong as gentleness. Nothing so gentle as real strength. Remember the old adage that honey catches more flies than vinegar. Here are some vinegar words that will sour your relationship with your colleague. A more effective way would be a less teacher-centered way is to, let's make it more fun by, instead of, and research suggests. Be aware of evaluative language, which often contains words as more, less, better, worse. Statements that start with instead of devaluate the previously offered idea. Research can support any side, but when you use it to convince our colleagues, it implies I know more about it than you do. It's academic bullying. Make sure you plan instruction and make sure your instruction is grounded on research, but don't shove research at your teachers. When I have used these sour statements in the past, I was left with burnt bridges and slammed doors. Another tip is to leave each collaboration session on a positive note. In the same way we sometimes have students complete an exit ticket before leaving the class as a formative assessment, we need to have collaborative exit tickets. We cannot leave the collaboration without doing one of two things: thanking or praising our co-teacher. The first option is to thank your colleague for something they did. One idea is that to thank them for making the time to collaborate, to co-plan, to co-teach. This sets the culture for positive collaboration in the future. The second option is to leave the session by praising your colleague. Andrew Hagensfeld recommends that by the end of each co-planning session, the EL teacher finds at least one idea to praise in their co-teacher. Remember that with both thanking and praising your colleagues, the more specific, the better. Another tip is to be future focused. To be future focused means not bringing up ineffective practices from a previous lesson, because that can feel like we are evaluating them. We can't change the past, so bringing it up without your colleague inviting you into a reflective dialogue about the practice is asking for trouble. Another tip I have found helpful in developing a positive relationship with my colleagues is the contribution checklist. This checklist entails asking myself if my contribution is kind, necessary, and timely. Make sure that everything you say is kind and free of judgment or criticism. Being overly helpful with lots of ideas can overwhelm teachers. Though things we want to share are generally helpful, ask yourself, are they absolutely necessary at this time? Timeliness means to be aware of your colleague's receptiveness to the suggestion. If someone is not ready to hear an idea or act on it, don't force it. You will have greater success when your colleague is in an open and willing state of mind. If your contribution does not match each part of the checklist, it may be best to refrain from contributing. There's a time and a place for everything, and even the most well-intentioned contributions. The Buddha said, the right message, said in the right way, said at the wrong time, is the wrong message. Please note, if a student's physical safety is at risk, the checklist no longer applies. You need to step in. This is my last tip. Complete this sentence frame. When co-planning, aim to ... more than... When co-planning, aim to work with their ideas more than offering completely new ones. It goes back to the mindset of collaboration. Construct on what they already have offered. Flow with their ideas, plant seeds for the future. It takes a lot of mental and emotional energy to convince others to do something differently when they already have an idea of what they want to do. If we are not careful, we can also cause the relationship to tend to freeze up at this point when we say, let's not use your idea, let's use my idea. Work with their ideas first, and eventually you'll gain their trust enough to offer completely new practices.
When we use this particular approach to collaboration and co-planning, we are planting seeds. This is what Tara Brach says about planting seeds using Henry David Thoreau's quote.
He said, "Though I do not believe that a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders."
I would also like to pause here to talk about anti-racism work. If a colleague said a racist or offensive statement about a group of students or about another colleague, we need to respond, but not react. Reacting would sound like this. You're a racist person. That was a racist thing to say. How could you say that about students? These are attacking statements, and when someone is attacked, they either attack back or become defensive. We've just turned into someone they need to fight and not someone they want to dialogue with. A different approach is to respond with compassionate inquiry by saying, "So you're saying," then restate what you think they're saying. Finish the summary with, "Is that what you mean?" The next step is to say, "That belief is not inclusive. An inclusive approach would be..." This framework helps your colleague see the belief compassionately mirrored back to them. The mirroring back raises their awareness of alternative approaches. With awareness, we might begin to change our beliefs, but if we attack, there is no possibility for growth. We will be met with resistance. The video was so long because I had so much to share about the power of co-planning. I feel like co-teaching has the limelight, yet co-planning makes the greatest impact. The guiding question for this week was, how can we plan as a team? Let's return to our mind map for the course. On the week 2 circle, type your answer to the guiding question. Then go read a few of your classmates' mind maps and leave a comment. If there are questions you have about co-planning, ask them on Voxer or come join our group co-planning session this week. Lastly, I invite you to complete the optional assignment. There are so many activities to choose from, and you can do as many as you like. Please, please, please remember to set the slide as a comment only, or no one will be able to comment. Please spend some time reading and responding to a few of your classmates' work as well. It's a great way to reflect on your practice. The videos are just 50% of the course. The other half is engaging with your classmates. I know you have demanding jobs and vibrant personal lives, so whatever you give, I'll celebrate. See you next week. Bye.